Happy almost Halloween, folks, and welcome to episode 570 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, October 30th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. You can also check out the all-new WrestleRant store over at ProWrestlingTees.com/WrestleRant. Buy a shirt today. Support the channel, support what I do, support the brand. I would greatly appreciate it. So let's get into it here. I have not yet organized the questions. It was one of those weeks, so I apologize if you hear a question in one place and then hear it again. Not the same question, but another question of yours, like a little bit later on in the video. Typically, I organize it better. But anyway, we get into it here. Mike does it. The first question from him. He asked, should WWE book the Bloodline versus Bloodline 2.0 similar to the 2014 Survivor Series match with Jey Uso playing the role of Dolph Ziggler? So by that he means Jey lasting until the very end, it coming down to him, and then winning the match for his team. I mean, you could do that, but it's going to be War Games. They've already announced Survivor Series this year as War Games. What I would do, and I saw someone say this on Twitter, and I forgot who it was exactly. It might have been Ibu from Wrestle Purist, actually. They came up with the idea of, there's no real reason this year, in my opinion, and the Ripley-Liv Morgan feud has been good and whatnot. We talked about that last week, and how it's kind of losing steam and whatnot. That's the only real feud befitting of a War Games matchup, a women's War Games matchup. They're probably going to do one anyway, but I would agree with his idea of doing a men's War Games match with the Bloodline, obviously, and then instead with the women, you do a traditional elimination Survivor Series tag team match. I would do the exact same thing. So your scenario only works if they were to do the Survivor Series elimination tag team match, not in War Games. Because in War Games, it doesn't come down to one person. It's always 4-on-4. I mean, obviously they have people enter the match in intervals, but it doesn't come down to like one person, versus two, 1-on-1, 1-on-4. It's never really that way during the matchup. Maybe early on, it's like 1-on-2, 2-on-3, whatever, but the actual finish of the match, it'll never be 4-on-1. Unless it turns into like that with the three other members getting taken out or whatever. But, that's not a bad idea. I would never try to replicate that finish from 2014. It's been a decade, but it still stands out as one of the greatest finishes in Survivor Series history. Between that, the Sting debut, and that Ziggler moment also had that going forward as well. It was an amazing moment, a great match, but it also had the Sting debut attached to it. And that was why Ziggler won. Didn't taint his victory, but it did overshadow it to a certain degree. And the follow-up with Ziggler sucked. They didn't really follow up accordingly and make him a star as they should have. He was Intercontinental Champion for like a fucking month, and then he dropped the belt again, within weeks. So they didn't really follow up with Ziggler the way that they should have. But no, I wouldn't do that exactly, but I do think, as we all kind of expect, based off the finish of SmackDown last week and what we saw on Raw this week, that Bloodline versus Bloodline at Survivor Series, very likely inside War Games, because they've already announced it as War Games, like I said, is happening. Your second question, thoughts on Black Ops 6? Will you be getting it and maybe streaming some games on Twitch? I have not done the Twitch thing. I've only ever really done gaming, videos here on the channel for like the 2K games and whatnot. I'm not a Black Ops guy. I don't think I've played it in the past. I think I've played Call of Duty. No, I played Halo. My older brother, many, many years, I don't know if he still plays this shit now, but when he was in high school, or when I was in high school and he was in high school and we were, he had his Xbox and I would play it and shit sometimes. I was always more of a Nintendo guy, Wii, GameCube kind of guy, PlayStation even. Never really kind of teetered into the Xbox stuff. I never played Black Ops, I don't think. So I will not be getting Black Ops 6. Hopefully it's a good game. I will not be streaming it on Twitch. But if I were to stream a game here on the channel, it would probably be here on YouTube. I don't know how that's really limited on YouTube compared to Twitch. I'm not, like I said, I'm not really a Twitch guy. I'd kind of have to start from scratch, whereas here on the channel we have some sort of a base to kind of build off of. So it would probably be here on YouTube, if anything. But I've never really, in the past, I've wanted to do a live stream of me doing 2K and stuff like that, but it's only ever really, I'm glad I can do it now. I've wanted to do it for a very long time with SVR07 GM mode. but I couldn't really figure out a way, without like paying fucking hundreds of dollars for the technology, to film myself playing the game and also to do it live. It would be a mess. So I think the kind of the formula that we have now is probably what it's going to be. I could play other games though. I did get and I keep forgetting to tweet about it, but I did get a copy of the Star Wars Outlaws game. I played it very briefly, but I got it more so for Alexis, and she played it. She loved it. She really liked the game. So with stuff like that, which I've said here on the channel, if it's something that you guys would want to see, whether it's wrestling related or not, I would consider doing it. So again, it doesn't have to be a 2K24 or 25 type of game, but if it's like Spider-Man, which I've talked about here on the channel before, I have both of the original Spider-Man games. I don't have the new one that came out a year or so ago. Maybe we could do like gameplay for that, but you know, with those sort of games, I don't really like to record myself playing it. I just want to fucking play it and have fun. And not that I'm not having fun when I record it, but it's just a lot easier to just play and do it at my own pace and not have to worry about doing it for a video. You know what I mean? But maybe in due time we could do more gameplay stuff and not have it just be wrestling related. But we'll see. Like I downloaded Bully on my PS4 about a year ago. That classic game from like fucking 06, 05 or whatever. Such a great fucking game. I played and beat that game many years ago. But it was like a couple bucks on the PS4 store, so I bought it and I played through a little bit of it again. I haven't touched it in a while, but you know, games like that, hey, fuck it. Why not? You know, I said before, if it's something that you guys want to see, maybe we could do it here on the channel at some point. Jordan B. from YouTube, their question was, what are some wrestler combinations that you think could be cool or fun tag teams? For me, it's LA Knight and The Miz, John Cena and R-Truth, Ricochet and Will Ospreay, MJF and Ricky Starks, Bryan Danielson and CM Punk, Shinsuke Nakamura and Finn Balor, Ethan Page and Logan Paul, and Bobby Roode and EC3. I can't see Bobby Roode with anyone, and I'm not going to say James Storm. That's the obvious choice, obviously, with beer money. But if it was like a makeshift team, and obviously he's like canceled now, but him and Austin Aries were an amazing team in TNA as the Dirty Heels many years ago, and it's a bummer they never got the chance, unless they teamed on a fucking house show or something. They never got the chance to team in WWE. That would have been awesome, because Austin Aries' WWE run was so short-lived, it never really worked out, but that would have been cool, though. You know one team that I think would have been a lot of fun, like, not now, but like in his prime, and they actually feuded in the NWA at one point about 5-6 years ago, LA Knight and Mr. Kennedy. Now Mr. Anderson. He doesn't really do much now, obviously, but like I said, they had a mini feud in NWA about 5 years ago, including a match on pay-per-view. I think they're Into the Fire pay-per-view. They had the opening match on that show, and it was a good match. As a tag team, I think LA Knight, then Eli Drake, and Mr. Kennedy circa like 08 would have been a great fucking tag team. The other tag teams are good. You know, maybe Ricochet and like Matt Sydal, Evan Bourne circa late 2000s, and maybe not Matt Sydal today. They're both in AEW, and Matt Sydal is still great, but I'm talking like when he was in his peak in the late 2000s when he really had a lot of buzz around him in WWE. You know, as far as other tag teams, I think CM Punk and MJF. You mentioned MJF and Starks, Danielson and Punk. Punk and MJF would be great because they work so well as rivals. As teammates, I feel like it would be even better, actually. You got them, you know, maybe Danielson and AJ Styles or I feel like the best tag teams could be like the greatest rivals, if that makes sense. So like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe were always great partners, or were always great opponents. I feel like as partners, they would be even better. I mean, that was the case in TNA. I mean, a lot of people probably forget about it, but there was a period in late 2012 where AJ Styles and Kurt Angle were the TNA World Tag Team Champions. And they were they were an amazing fucking tag team. They weren't the champions for very long, but they were a great fucking tag team. So, more teams like that, more the merrier. I'm totally down for it. So now we move on to the Facebook questions. First one from Noel here. Shout out, by the way, to Christopher L. from Facebook, Chris W. from YouTube as well. Obviously an avid listener. He sends in great questions every single week. No questions this week, he mentioned to me on Twitter, but it is his birthday coming up on Sunday. I'll try to wish you a birthday on Sunday itself, Chris, but happy early birthday to Chris. He's always, like I said, a great person sending questions here to the show, a good dude in general. Hopefully at some point our paths do cross in reality. I know they almost did over Mania, but didn't quite work out with my schedule and whatnot, but at some point would love to make it happen, and I hope you have a great Halloween tomorrow. Have a great birthday on Sunday as well. That's actually the day I'll be at Rhode Island Comic-Con, on the exact same day that I went to my first ever WWE show, 15 years earlier in the exact same building. Because Rhode Island Comic-Con's at the Amica Pavilion Center, the former Dunkin' Donuts Center. I was actually there for Raw a couple of months ago. And I had my first WWE live experience at a ECW SmackDown TV taping there back in 2009 on that exact day, 15 years earlier, which is fucking crazy. So, very excited about that coming up this weekend, but it's also your birthday that Sunday, so happy early birthday. But anyway, back to Noel. The first question was, do you think WWE will book a Bloodline Civil War at Survivor Series in a War Games match now? The quick answer is yes. It's been pretty apparent for a while, I would say. And it's now even more clear that's where they're headed based on what we saw on SmackDown last week and Raw on Monday night. I'm not overly thrilled that they're doing Roman and the Usos. They've already announced it. Versus the Bloodline, the current Bloodline, for Crown Jewel. Before Roman and Jay could even get back on the same page. That's coming on SmackDown, and I understand not wanting to announce a match, that quick. Like, announce it on SmackDown and then do it, less than 24 hours later. I get that, but it still feels super fucking rushed. It's great TV, but it is very, very rushed. I would have rather they just waited until Survivor Series to do the War Games match, and maybe do Roman and Solo a Crown Jewel instead. But, hopefully they're not waiting until WrestleMania to do that match. I have no fucking desire to see Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa one-on-one at WrestleMania. Hopefully at that point it's Roman and Jacob. Roman and Solo, no fucking thanks. But anyway, your second question was, do you believe that NXT has the best women's division in the world right now? Yeah, I mean, it might, especially with the arrivals of Julia, Stephanie Vakir, however you pronounce her last name, and Delta Nazaria, who I really have not seen any of. I haven't even watched NXT from last night yet, but I've heard nothing but good things as far as how good she is from other promotions and whatnot, and the buzz that she had coming into the company. I mean, probably. I mean, WWE as a whole, they have different brands. Like AEW has an amazing women's division, but it's all one division. I mean, I guess you can include Ring of Honor, but is there really any brand, discrepancy there? Like, it's all one division. So honestly, if I have to go by that logic, WWE in general, I would say is the best women's division, including NXT. But if you're going by brands, I would probably go AEW over NXT. NXT is a lot of women's talent. They feature their women's talent a lot on their shows, which is great. But if we're going off of talent alone, for as good as the NXT women's division is, and for as well as they promote them on their shows, the AEW women's division, in a nutshell, again, it's kind of hard to quantify because it's all one big division, I would say is better than the Raw women's division individually, or the SmackDown women's division individually, or even the NXT women's division individually, or TNA, Ring of Honor, which is basically AEW anyway. I would probably go AEW on that one. But NXT is close. NXT's women's division is great. I wouldn't put it up there with the best women's division they've ever had. Their women's division 5 years ago with Tegan Nox, Dakota Kai, Rhea Ripley, Shayna Baszler, Bianca Belair, Io Sky, the list goes on, was, Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell had just signed at that point. Shotzi had just signed at that point. I would still say that was the best crop of women they've ever had in NXT at one time. But, it's still pretty great now. And I think they do a better job now of promoting them than they ever have before, because they are all over that fucking 2-hour show. Whether the matches are great or not, they are pretty well featured on the show, especially compared to the men, which, not that they're not well featured, the men are all over the show, but the depth in the women's division is a lot bigger and better than the men's depth right now in NXT, I would say. Now we go to the Twitter questions. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine. His first question was, also check him out on YouTube, as I always say. Real Honesty with John Ritland, always putting up great movie reviews and WWE pro wrestling reviews. Check him out on YouTube. His first Twitter question was, and this is where they're all kind of mixed up because I haven't put together the document yet of, including people's questions together. But anyway, he asked, so reports came out that WrestleDream had 6,300 paid in about 1,000 to 1,500 comps, many of which did not show up because there's no way there was 8,000 there. My question is it going to get to the point where fans can just show up at AEW shows and get cheap or free tickets? I don't think so. I thought I heard going into Double or Nothing either last year or this year. I had seen that post, I think it was last year, where it said, oh, if you buy a burger here, like someone took a picture of a flyer on a restaurant that said, oh, if you come eat here, we'll give you 4 free tickets to AEW Double or Nothing. That I think was proven to not be real. But AEW has done the gimmicks before where they're like, hey, buy 1, get 2 free, or buy 2, get another 2 free, whatever. I've heard of that before in AEW recently, I'm not sure. But will it get to the point where they're giving out free tickets? Like just flat out free tickets? Probably not. I mean, I don't think it's like a TNA situation where back in the day, if you didn't have to pay to go to the TNA tapings. Obviously, now you pay for tickets and shit to go to the pay-per-views and even their TV shows now. But like when they used to tape at Universal Studios, to my knowledge, I never had the chance to do this. But I'm pretty sure if you just showed up, you could go to the TNA shows. Like they would say, hey, free wrestling, come on in, watch the shows. Like they didn't have paid attendance for those live TV shows. It was like a studio setting, and they would just pull random people in, which is why those crowds sucked, because a lot of those people were not wrestling fans, and they were just there just for the fuck of it, while little Sally was on fucking Superman or whatever at Universal Studios. Then, Dad can go to the wrestling show. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't think it'll ever get to that point. As far as like cheap tickets, again, if I'm remembering correctly, I thought when AEW first launched, for their pay-per-views and especially for the TV shows, they did have cheaper tickets, and that was like part of the gimmick, where they wanted to be a true alternative to WWE. Honestly, even now more than ever, this would be smart, where if you want to go to an AEW show, you can get cheap entertainment, and not cheap as far as like bad. I mean, some of the weekly Dynamites are not great, but part of the gimmick of AEW is that, hey, we are not WWE. We will give you what you guys want at an affordable rate. And WWE's prices are far more fucking expensive now compared to even 5 years ago. So honestly, I mean, I know the economy's different and whatnot, but I think if AEW can afford to do that, if they're not pulling in 10,000 people for these shows, a good way to attract more people is by lowering the ticket price. I haven't bought an AEW ticket in a while. I've gotten usually comp tickets and shit from AEW and whatnot, which is cool. So I don't know what the tickets go for now as far as what they cost to get in the shows. But if they're like $50, $60 for like a regular ticket, not even like ringside or whatever, that's just stupid. Like they could lower it to like $25 a ticket. Again, not for like a premium seat. A premium seat could be like $100, $150. WWE's are hundreds of dollars. But AEW could afford to lower them and hopefully get more people in the building. I think it's worth trying. I think it's definitely worth trying. So I feel like AEW could get to that point. But as far as like them just giving out like free tickets or shit like that, probably not. I don't know if it'll ever be that bad, but then again, I'm not exactly sure, so I guess time will tell. At Iwago91, their question was, is Jordynne Grace losing the Knockouts title another hint that she's headed to WWE? Yeah, I mean, I feel like obviously she had to drop the championship at some point anyway. It made sense for her to lose it at Bound for Glory, their biggest pay-per-view of the year. It also made sense for her to lose it to Masha Slamovich. It did feel rushed if you watched the shows as far as how they put that together. There really wasn't any long-term storytelling there. They did obviously play off of Jordynne Grace beating her 2 years ago multiple times. But like, it wasn't as if Slamovich was racking up wins in the months leading up to that big, title win. She had actually just lost the Knockouts tag titles with fucking Alicia Edwards Alicia got hurt, so it was technically Tasha Steelz, like a month or so ago. So this kind of came out of nowhere, but it was the right call. They had a very good match. So she had to lose it at some point. She had beaten pretty much that entire division. So when else and who better to drop it to than Masha at Bound for Glory? That being said, I feel like it was inevitable anyway that she was WWE bound. If that report is true, that her contract was amended or whatever to have expired from the summer of next year to January of next year, then she probably will again be in the Royal Rumble and be a pretty viable person to win the whole thing. Honestly, like she could be in the main roster tomorrow. They have Julia there right now. They have Stephanie Valkyrie there right now. Zarya. Zarya's Australian, so I don't think there's like a language barrier there. For Julia, there is, and for Stephanie, there is. And not that they can't speak English, but I think they've even said, even Shawn Michaels or someone had mentioned in like an interview or something that, their English isn't like the cleanest or the greatest or whatever. So I think being in NXT and kind of learning the WWE style and working with the talent they have there and whatnot will be better for them to kind of help them through that language transition, if that is indeed an issue for them. That won't be an issue, obviously, for Jordynne Grace. She could go right to the main roster and win the fucking Rumble and be an opponent for Rhea Ripley or whoever the champion is on SmackDown by Mania. Liv Morgan, I don't think she'll be champion by Mania. I could see Rhea Ripley getting the belt back, Jordynne Grace winning the Rumble, and that being the Mania match. Because honestly, I don't really know who else Rhea Ripley faces at Mania. I don't think the Liv Morgan thing goes on till Mania, and it shouldn't. It should definitely end on the sooner side. So, just an idea. But yeah, her losing the championship was step one. If her contract is indeed up in January, I could see her doing the favors for other people on the way out. Maybe losing to Masha again or other women in that division to kind of put them over before she heads to WWE. So I totally see that happening as well. Back to @Reborn again, John Ritland. His question was, non-wrestling related, any scary movie plans for Halloween this year, or this time around? I've got a couple lined up, as well as movies like Here and Anora. Side note, I'm at 268 movies for 2024, which will increase quickly as I've got 30 lined up to watch in theaters and streaming in November. Yeah, no, you're totally getting to 300. I know we've already established that, John, but that's awesome. Yeah, as far as movies I'm watching, like for Halloween this year, it's not Halloween related. I don't know how scary it'll be in terms of, Halloween sort of stuff. It might be scary bad, I don't know. But my current plan is to go see, Alexis and I, our current plan is to go see Venom 3, actually, on Thursday. Because we were at a wedding for my brother last weekend. The movie came out last weekend. I've seen the other two movies. I like the other two movies. I haven't heard this one's the greatest. I heard mixed reviews. So, we didn't have a chance last week and haven't had a chance this week to go yet. And I'm like, listen, we like to do something on Halloween. I was thinking maybe going to a haunted house or something, but it just didn't really work out. So I'm like, we'll go see a movie instead. We'll save Venom for Thursday instead of going like on Tuesday or whatever, because they have $5 Tuesdays around here. So I'm thinking, we can go on Tuesday. But then I'm like, well, if we're not actually doing anything on Halloween, and I got a free AMC ticket still lined up. I got like a free fucking AMC ticket for any movie at almost any time a couple of months ago, and I haven't used it for anything yet. And I was like, hey, fuck, we'll use it for this one. So if it works, it should. I think for any new movie, you have to wait like a week. It's been a week since it came out by tomorrow, so I think I should be good. But yeah, those are our current plans. We actually, and I tweeted you this yesterday, John, but a couple things as far as your question goes. One, we have been watching the ex-Pearl Maxine movies. Alexis has her own watch list of movies that she's wanted to watch. And John Ritland, actually, who we're talking about here, gave me the codes for the first two movies when they came out 2 years ago, or last year, or whatever it was. So I was like, fuck yeah. So I already have those in my Movies Anywhere library, and we're going to watch. We already watched X the other day. Didn't love X. I heard Pearl was better, so we're going to try to watch that either today or tomorrow, if not after Halloween. As far as the other movies that you mentioned, Here in Anora, I did watch the trailers that you sent me. They both look like really good movies, and I think they're both out this weekend. I would probably see Here over Anora, but Anora looked good. Here looked great. Honestly, I don't know if I can see Here just because the Here movie, that is. It has Tom Hanks in it and a few other people. Paul Bettany from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It looks really emotional. I don't know if I can handle that. That movie looks like it'll make me cry multiple times. I'm not ready for that. That's also why I don't want to see that Andrew Garfield, Florence Pugh movie, Here in Time, or whatever that movie is. That also looks like it's really emotional, so no thanks. But yeah, if they're that good, let me know, and maybe I'll check them out at another point. Back to @Iwago91. His next question was, overall, what did you make of Kalani Jordan's reign as the inaugural NXT Women's North American Champion? I thought she was a very good inaugural NXT Women's North American Champion. Winning it in that ladder match, which was a fun match. The match with Sol Ruca was really good. Who did she beat? Did she defend it in No Mercy? I don't remember. I think she did. Oh, no, yeah, she faced Wendy Chu, and they had a good match. It was probably Wendy Chu's one of her better matches, actually, in that character. But they had a good match. But yeah, the Sol Ruca match was a lot of fun. I think she had a match with Michin on NXT TV and a few other people as well. She had a title defense recently. Was it Jada Parker? She had a TV title defense on TV like a couple of weeks ago. And she won, obviously, before losing it. And I thought Fallon Henley was a great person for her to lose it to. JC Jane has grown on me. She's good, but I think Fallon Henley is like one of the unsung heroes of that division as far as like how good she is, and she doesn't really get the opportunity sometimes to show that. So I'm glad that she won the championship. But I thought Kelani Jordan, she held it for a while. She won it like almost 5 months ago, so it's not like she lost it within a month. She was a very good first champion, and we'll see where she goes from here. At Oj Matt 16, his question was, seeing as Hikuleo signed with WWE months ago, how would you like to see him introduced? Straight to the main roster or spend some time tearing it up in NXT? I don't really have a preference, to be honest with you. I've seen Hikuleo's work in AEW, some in New Japan, TNA as well. He's good, but like he could benefit from an NXT run. Like Solo Sikoa, for example, they could have very easily introduced him in the Bloodline story as soon as he got signed a few years ago, but he wasn't ready. Hikuleo's had more experience, I think, than fucking Solo Sikoa did at that point. So you could bring Hikuleo right up to the story. The thing is there a spot for him that makes sense? Because I don't think he's like the fifth man on Team Current Bloodline, New Bloodline, Bloodline 2.0 at Survivor Series. I think it's going to be 4-on-4, because if you do 5-on-5, the OG Bloodline could bring in Sami Zayn, which was already teased, and they should do that. But then they would have to kind of stretch for a fifth member. Unless Paul Heyman is fucking dusting off the boots, putting on the gear that he wore for his feud with CM Punk a decade plus ago, then I don't really think it's going to be, there's no need for it to be 5-on-5. So Hikuleo's role in that story isn't really necessary right now. You can wait until that chapter is over and bring him in after Survivor Series. That's also very possible. Maybe you kick out Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu takes over, and then Solo Sikoa has to go back to the original Bloodline. That is also very possible. So we'll see. I would probably just put him in the Bloodline story. But like I said, if there's not a spot in the story that makes sense, then just put him in NXT. And I thought, like you said, I thought that was the original idea. And I thought he might debut at like one of the first couple of shows that they did on the CW on the road, and they didn't. Could they debut him next week on the ECW Arena show? They could. They haven't done it at like a PLE yet, so I don't really know. I'm not really sure what their plans are for Hikuleo, but I am curious to see what they do with him. At Millennial Noob, their question was, what are your thoughts on the WWE Independent Development Program? Do you think that they'll be scouting some indie talent, and do you think they'll sign them? I mean, that's the whole point, right? For them to sign indie talent from these promotions that they're working with. But, I think it's cool. I'll go more in depth with it tomorrow on Wrestle Rant Radio with Mr. Marceau. I'll have a lot more to say. It definitely has its pros and cons. But I will say this. When they reintroduced, or not even reintroduced, when they incorporated and first introduced the NIL program a couple of years ago, the big skepticism was, are they just shutting out all the indie people? Now, they've obviously signed a lot of indie people and notable names to WWE since then, especially since Vince has been gone. They brought back a lot of people. They have signed new talent from AEW that did not go through a fucking indie program. They've even signed indie talent themselves. Not a lot of them, but they have signed some indie talent. Like Javon Evans was a glorified indie guy. Like he wasn't in TNA, he wasn't in AEW. I don't know if he did any dark matches there and shit, but he did do like GCW. He was a glorified indie guy. And they signed him. So it's not like they haven't signed indie wrestlers and just established people. But they could be doing more of it. And I think more of a healthy balance between the NIL program, which has worked and has been a success overall, especially now, if you look at like the NXT men's and specifically the women's division. To say it has not been a success would be just fucking stupid and short-sighted. To combine that and kind of find a healthy balance between that and this new indie program is cool. It does have its drawbacks of those companies, those indie companies, and development territories, whatever you want to call it, being exclusive to WWE. Does that mean they only have to have aspirations of working for WWE? Can they work for those companies and then go to AEW? Does that, is it a factor where they can't lose, like in other indie matches, where if they're going to be signed to a WWE developmental deal, that they can't lose to other people that aren't under a deal? Like, it might pose problems with that, but like I said, we'll get into it more tomorrow. I think it has its pros and cons. I am excited for it, though. I think it's a cool idea, and long overdue, honestly. Back to Iwago 91, his third question was, With Zarya attacking Fatal Influence after Fallon Henley won the NXT Women's North American Championship, does this mean that she'll be challenging for the title down the road? I would think so. I haven't watched NXT yet, so maybe they announced that on Tuesday. I don't know. I mean, I would hope Fallon Henley would get more than a fucking week-long title run. I think to take it off of Jordan and then put it right back on like a babyface within a week would be dumb. It's not, like if she lost it back to Kalani, that would be one thing. And Zarya can become champion fairly soon, but it shouldn't come at the expense of Fallon Henley that quickly. I mean, that attack could plant the seeds for what's going to inevitably happen at some point, but it shouldn't happen like next week. I would give her at least like 2 months as champion. Give her at least one successful title defense one-on-one with Kalani Jordan, and then maybe she can lose it to Zarya at like fucking Deadline or something in December. But yeah, it is inevitable based on what we saw on the pay-per-view Halloween Havoc the other day. At E13A, do you think the Moxley BCC Takeover angle is going to help motivate and push the mid-card / lower card AEW talent? I really don't think so. We already saw the BCC, or whatever Moxley's group is called now, beat the Dark Order and then immediately they beat Top Flight and Action Andretti first on Collision about a week or so ago. And then they immediately beat Dark Order in an impromptu match in that Battle of the Belt special right afterward. So if they're continuing to feud with BCC after that, then I don't even know what to say. Dark Order does absolutely nothing for me at this point. Top Flight and Andretti I think they're a very talented trio. They are simply there in the storyline to get their asses kicked. It doesn't really benefit anyone. Because people are trying to tell me, you need to feed, people... You need to feed people to the BCC initially. You're not going to initially feed them like all the big stars, which is true. I mean, to be fair, you could. I mean, it's not like the NWO was in there beating up losers, or beating losers, rather, in their first couple of matches. They were going, Hulk Hogan won the fucking World Heavyweight Championship. Again, those were established guys, but so are these. They're not new people. They won the World Championship within a month. The Outsiders were facing top talent at Bash at the Beach. They were not facing fucking Disco Inferno, to my knowledge. Maybe on TV they were. And again, that was a pay-per-view. They're not facing Dark Order and Top Flight and Action Andretti on pay-per-view. My point is that you have to feed people to them that the fans care about. Maybe Top Flight and Andretti, I can understand that. Honestly, I don't really have an issue with them being involved in this thing. Dark Order is not over. No one gives a fuck about Dark Order. They have not been relevant in a very long time. So get them the fuck out of the story. Stop showing them on the show. If you want to incorporate like Daniel Garcia and Orange Cassidy and Private Party, who have been more relevant recently, could even become the new AEW World Tag Team Champions tonight, and they should, that is fine. But making us think that these other guys are real threats to Moxley is a joke. And it's funny that I mentioned like the Outsiders thing and the NWO thing. Moxley, when he himself first arrived in the WWE scene with the Shield, WWE wanted them to be taken seriously. Who was their first match with? It wasn't with fucking 3MB. I don't even know if they ever faced 3MB. I think they did like years later, but like they were not facing and beating up losers consistently. They were going after Ryback, who at that point was the top babyface on the show, Team Hell No, John Cena, like top stars on the show. And a lot of those people, if not all of them, they beat in their first 6 to 8 months. And those were new guys that they were helping get over here. These are not new guys, but like they're already established. That's the thing. They don't need to be fed easy wins. Or listen, if you want to give them easy wins, that's fine. But trying to make us care about undercard talent that have not been over and we have not seen on the show in forever. I know Kip Sabian, who I also don't give a fuck about at this point, is involved in another story, but I would say the same thing about him. If he was involved in this story, I would say, listen, who gives a shit? Who cares? And it's not even the case of, we got it like the day oneers here in AEW. Jon Moxley's been literally there since day one, their first ever show, Double or Nothing. He has been there since the beginning, so it's not like a WWE takeover, which they tried to do with the Outcast, and that failed too. With the Saraya, Ruby Soho fucking trio they did about a year or so ago. That was a massive fucking failure with Tony Storm as well. And Tony's doing a lot better now with their new character. The early month of this storyline, I know they retired Bryan Danielson. That was kind of like the equivalent of the NWO thing, where they did the big heel beatdown. So they're like AEW's Bash at the Beach, let's say, was all out. Okay. The following month, Hulk Hogan wins the World Heavyweight Championship. The following month in AEW, Jon Moxley wins the AEW World Championship. So that's the equivalent, and I get it. But like the weekly television shows are not exciting. I know they're telling a longer story there with like Orange Cassidy and shit. That's fine. But like they need to stop featuring guys like the Dark Order so heavily. I do not give a fuck. So no, I don't think this will elevate any of those guys. It could help motivate and elevate people like Garcia and Private Party and Orange Cassidy, who hasn't really been doing a hell of a whole lot this year. That I'm on board with. The undercard talent, I just don't see that happening. At Bill Meister 88, his first question was, he says, Happy Halloween to you and Alexis Graham. First question, do you have any spooky plans for Thursday? And do you have a go-to horror film? So like I said earlier, our current plan, unless this changes, is to go see Venom 3 on Thursday night at some point. No costumes this year, at least not for me. Alexis is dressing up for Rhode Island Comic-Con this weekend. I try to have a costume most years, but like we're not really doing anything. And we're not going to any parties. Like there was a Halloween party that we could have gone to about a week ago, but we couldn't go because I had to go to a wedding for my brother. So no Halloween parties this year. So we're just going to the movies, hanging out. And that's our Halloween plans. Maybe get Chick-fil-A. How spooky is that, you know? I have a free sandwich coupon. Maybe cash that in, you know? But yeah, those are our plans for Thursday. And then as far as a go-to horror film, I don't know if I have a favorite. I've always said my favorite guilty pleasure, one of my favorite guilty pleasure horror movies, or just really movies in general, is Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan. I think it's part 7. That movie is so fucking bad, and I have fond memories of watching it for the first time in my college dorm room 11 years ago. That movie is just fucking awful, but it's such a fun time. I've watched that back several times. I love it for how bad it is. That's one of them. I like going to watch like Friday the 13th movies I've never seen before, because I haven't seen all of them. So I've tried to make it a tradition over the years to watch at least one that I haven't seen before. So like I had never seen the first one before this year. So on Columbus Day a couple of weeks ago, I watched it for the first time and really enjoyed it. So that's probably the best one they've ever done, is part 1. The other ones are like just bad. But yeah, part 1 was actually really good. You know, honestly, any of the Halloween movies, Halloween 2018 probably still sticks out as my favorite because that was such a great, well-done movie. The first one was obviously the first one's a classic, but I really loved that 2018 Halloween movie. I had fond memories of seeing that a few times in the theaters at the time. That was an excellent movie. The sequels aren't as great, but I just love going to see that sort of shit. So those movies, I'm sure there's others. I've watched a lot of horror movies and slasher films. Scream is also great, but I think my go-to might be the 2018 Halloween movie. I like that one a lot. Your next question, he asked, I wondered if you could put a name next to this for the greatest of all time in wrestling. So he gave each category and was wondering my thoughts. And I did put some thought into these answers when I saw your question, and because I couldn't just come in here blindfolded because I didn't really... honestly, I would need some time to think about it. But you said for in-ring performer, on the mic, all-rounder, tag team, and my greatest of all time for WWE/TNA/New Japan, probably for each promotion. In-ring performer, I would probably go Shawn Michaels. On the mic, I would probably go Ric Flair. I want to say The Rock. You know what? I'm going to go Paul Heyman. I know he's not a wrestler, but I think Paul Heyman over a longer stretch of time has had more like dynamic work between the Bloodline, the Brock stuff, ECW, commentary, being a GM. I'd probably go Paul Heyman. You could also include Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes. Those are all obviously great answers and viable answers. Roddy Piper, Stone Cold, but I would probably go Paul Heyman. All-rounder? If not Shawn Michaels, I hate like repeating the same name for like a similar category, although Shawn Michaels would make sense. I'm going to say Bryan Danielson. I think Bryan Danielson might be a better all-round performer than Shawn Michaels. I think Shawn might be more exciting to watch for some people, but I don't know, Danielson's just connection with the crowd, and I don't know, his matches are just fucking, like, he's put on, in my opinion, more 5-star matches than Shawn did, and Shawn had a lot of them. But Daniel, Bryan, even not on the biggest stages, had probably more of them. That weren't just seen in, like, bingo halls in fucking Japan that I'm not aware of. Like, even some of the matches in Ring of Honor, the AEW run, obviously, WWE, on big stages, I'd probably go Bryan Danielson. Tag team, probably Legion of Doom. I think the Hardys are up there, Edge and Christian are up there, the Dudley Boys, the Usos, Hart Foundation, but I'd probably go LOD. And then greatest of all time for WWE, TNA, New Japan. So if we're doing this individually, New Japan, I'm not well versed in New Japan as much as some other people are. I would probably go Okada. Kenny Omega is also up there. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other people from the early years of New Japan. You can include like Tanahashi. That's not that early, but like Inoki, people like that. I'm not sure if he was, what his career looked like as far as matches and accomplishments exactly for New Japan compared to other promotions, but I'm going to go Okada. Because he's one of the greatest all time in general, but specifically in New Japan for the past decades. So I'd go Okada for that. TNA, probably AJ Styles. He was the standard bearer there. You could go Kurt Angle too, but AJ was like the standard bearer there for over a decade. Won all the titles, had amazing matches. Some of the most memorable matches in TNA's history involved AJ Styles. Became a household name there that brought him to WWE years later. So AJ, in my opinion, for TNA. And then for WWE, I've always said, I think this was my ranking when we at Bleacher Report did a top 50, or I think it was a top 25, I think it was top 50, greatest WWE superstars of all time. That's different than greatest wrestlers. I've always said that. Because in my opinion, the WWE Superstar label includes the entire package. So for just WWE, I'd probably go Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because he was one of the biggest stars they ever produced alongside, Hulk Hogan and John Cena and The Rock and whatnot. But Stone Cold's work at his peak was hotter than any of those other guys, aside from maybe Hogan. Because you guys asked me, it might have been Billy actually, I forgot who it was, who had the bigger impact on wrestling, Hogan or Stone Cold Steve Austin. I said Hogan, and I still stand by that, I think, overall. Negative impact too, but I think just biggest impact in general would probably be Hogan. But greatest of all time in WWE, greatest WWE superstar, the reactions he gets even to this day are fucking mind-blowing, So I would still probably go Stone Cold Steve Austin, with Shawn Michaels at a close second. But I want to give different answers for each category, so I would go Stone Cold Steve Austin for that last one. Your last question here. Is it time WWE introduced either a US or IC title for the women? No offense, but the women's tag team titles serve little purpose, and a mid-card title would surely elevate the tag team division better. Would love to get your thoughts. I will say this. I think WWE has done a lot better of a job in the last couple of months of elevating that tag team division and making it more interesting than it was even 6 to 12 months ago. Even right now, they've stretched this feud out between Jade and Bianca, Chelsea and Piper, Damage Control, and the Metaphors Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson on NXT across all 3 shows, culminating in a fatal 4-way tag team title match for the pay-per-view on Saturday. So that's pretty cool how they've kind of seamlessly furthered that feud across 4 shows, gotten everyone in there. I still don't really care about the tag team titles, because look at it this way. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn won the tag team titles back in June at the Clash of the Castle show. They were champions for about 2 months. Didn't get a whole lot of television time in the beginning. They got more television time towards the end of their run. They lose the belts. They get a rematch for the belts. They lose that too. We haven't really seen them since. So were they really elevated from that run? The answer is no. They're pretty much in the same spot. I mean, not literally elevated, but were they elevated? Yes, but not by a wide margin. Not enough to really make that run matter. That was really just done to give, Scotland natives in Clash of the Castle their moment, because Drew lost and Piper Niven lost. So that's what that accomplished. And also just to keep Bianca and Jade busy until they got the belts back, which they did about 2 months later. So I still don't really care about the tag team titles. We talked a lot about women's mid-card belts and why they should introduce them. If and when they do, they probably will not come at the expense of the tag team titles. I mean, they did something that I did not think they would do in getting rid of the NXT tag team titles last year. I thought they would. When they introduce championships, it's a lot harder for them to get rid of them when they kind of commit to it. But they got rid of the NXT Women's Tag Team titles, which they then followed up with a North American title for the women this year. And that's been a lot greater of a use to that mid-card division in NXT than tag titles would have been and were for many years. I would still say the same thing about the women's tag titles on the main roster. Get rid of the tag titles entirely and focus on either individual mid-card women's titles for both brands, or start with one and have that champion go to both brands and defend against talent on both shows. I mean, they say fuck you to the brand split anyway, so what would be the point of having two separate titles? They could. I mean, they have enough depth. They have I can't say depth, but they have enough talent to make that work. The matches may not be interesting, but they could do two separate women's titles. But I would start with one and then just have them be a floating champion. Maybe not NXT, because they already have the North American title for the women. Honestly, I would just take that belt and have it defended on Raw and SmackDown as well. That would also give the NXT Women's Champion some, exposure on the main shows before they lose it to a main roster talent. But, if they want to keep that exclusive to NXT, because they have enough depth there to make it work, that's fine. But they could do the same thing with Raw and SmackDown and have it defended on just Raw and SmackDown. That's probably what I would do personally. And then the last question of the episode for this week, from at Misdemeanor6, they asked, if House of Black was to bring in a new guy, who do you think it should be? They have an ally in Darby Allin. He could fit in, they asked, or said. But I am not sure who could be an actual member of House of Black. I would love a House of Black versus a new look BCC. House of Black will need to win it, though. Well, they're not. I mean, House of Black is not beating BCC. They are promoting BCC as the new top heel faction on that show. They're just getting their feet wet right now. They are not winning that match. I can tell you right now, without even knowing Tony Khan personally, that's his new toy that he's really all excited about. He doesn't give a fuck about House of Black. He's not given a fuck about House of Black in a very long time. They are on the show to be on the show. That is it. But yeah, as far as a new member, if it wasn't Darby Allin, if they were to do Darby Allin in the House of Black versus the new look BCC, that would be actually perfect, because Darby Allin's already feuding with the BCC, or John Moxley's group, again, whatever they're calling them. They haven't really called them the BCC as of late, so I don't really think that's the name they're going with anymore, now that Danielson's also not in it and Regal's not there. But for the sake of transparency, let's just call it the BCC. They could do that. I don't think they will. But if you want a full-fledged member of the group, I think they're perfectly fine as a trio. They also have Julia Hart, who's their manager on the female side. They don't really need more than 3 or 4 people. I would disband the group in general and have Malachi Black go back to WWE, but it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. To add a new member, I looked at the roster. No one really made sense, but, and this is going to sound stupid, he's not doing anything right now. I think it's more of a case of they're just waiting until his deal expires to get rid of him. Danhausen. He has not been on the show in a very long fucking time. He is not hurt anymore. He could be brought in tomorrow. He could be used tonight on the Halloween episode. I don't think he will be. It would be cool if he was. I don't think he is. That being said, Danhausen sounds stupid because he's a comedy character, but I think you could turn him heel, because I know before he did the comedy stuff, which got over, obviously, he was supposed to be a demon-esque wrestler, a fucking 50s movie vampire type character, I think. And then, not that it didn't really work, but he found more success with the comedy thing and kind of went down that route. So I would turn Danhausen heel. The babyface thing they completely wasted. Danhausen was never going to be the WWE or fucking AEW World Champion, but they never really did as much with him as they probably could have. So that ship sailed in AEW. But if they want to use him before he leaves, which AEW, that doesn't really seem like their MO. If someone's probably not going to re-sign, they just don't use them. That's the Eric Bischoff mentality from WCW. Not that WWE doesn't do that, but with Ricochet, they probably thought he was going to stay, but they used him up until the very end to put over Braun Breaker and people like that, Ilya Dragunov in that great match back in May on Raw, as opposed to having someone sit at home. At least have them on the show to do jobs. I would put Danhausen in the group, and then it doesn't work out in storyline. If they don't want to keep him in the company, then you just have him get attacked by House of Black. But yeah, I think incorporating Danhausen into House of Black, attempting to turn him heel or doing a storyline there could be interesting or entertaining. It would be better than whatever the fuck they got going on right now, which is a whole lot of nothing. Buddy Matthews is facing Adam Cole tonight on Dynamite, and that was why that squash match existed on Dynamite last week with the House of Black, was to get Buddy Matthews on the show, picking up a win before facing Cole tonight, which he's losing, is Buddy Matthews. But beyond that, they got a whole lot of fucking nothing going on right now. So I would just put, Danhausen, let them try something new. Might not work, but it's better than fucking nothing, which is exactly what they got going on right now, like I said. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of #AskGSM, episode 570, here for the Halloween week edition of the show. It's going to be going up a bit late, but I am going to be having hopefully a Halloween design up on the Pro Wrestling Tees store uploaded very, very soon. So I'll promote it here on the channel next week in next week's episode and all the other videos here on the channel. But check it out over at prowrestlingtees.com/WrestleRant. Link down below in the description box. Also available at WrestleRant.com. Just click on the store. It'll take you right to the site. Support the show, support the brand, support the channel by buying a shirt today. Would greatly appreciate it. And as far as this show goes, you can send in questions every single week by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/gram.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. Have a very spooky, scary Halloween tomorrow, and I'll catch your ass down the road.